We got a really weird poll out of Iowa today. A really, really interesting poll that I need to talk about. There is a newspaper in Iowa called the Des Moines Register, which is very famous for having scarily accurate polls in governor's races, presidential races, and Senate races. The Des Moines Register, at all of those levels, president, Senate, governor, they have been within 2 points of the final result going back to 2012, and they have always picked the winner in those races. And a lot of people contribute that success to Ann Selzer, the woman who actually runs the poll. She's quite adamant about how she runs the poll. She does not pay attention to broader trends or make any assumptions. She just conducts polls. So there's something called herding in polling, which is when you start getting high quality polls that point to one thing and other pollsters start following them. So instead of getting an accurate read on a state or an electorate, what you've really got is just all the pollsters trying not to be outliers or look too wrong, so they just kind of stick with the norm amongst polls. Ann Selzer has not done that, which has produced some incredibly accurate results for her with a margin of error of 2% at most, which is much better than the normal pollsters, which get about a margin of error of 3.5% normally. Selzer was really the canary in the coal mine, as it were, for 2016, when everyone assumed that Hillary Clinton was going to win in the landslide going through this. She actually put Trump up by 7 in Iowa in her polling. And that was a pretty big deal at the time, because Obama had won Iowa twice, and it was regarded as a swing state back in those days. So seeing Trump ahead by 7, he eventually won it by 9. That was really the point, was oh, Hillary Clinton is not going to walk away with this. The same is true in 2020, where she had Biden running quite a bit behind Trump. And that was when a lot of people realized, oh, this is not going to be a landslide election like we think. This is a sign that it's really going to be a fight, which it was in the end. So a lot of people were sitting around thinking, okay, we need this poll, because when this poll comes out, it's going to tell us a lot. Because if Trump is ahead by 2 or 3, that would be pretty good for the Midwest. That means that she'll probably be doing much better in Wisconsin, much better in Michigan. So there was, I thought, as long as it comes back, the final Selzer Des Moines poll comes back and it's not too positive for Trump, that'll be a good sign for Harris. Well, it just came out and it's not Trump plus 1 or 2 or 3, it's Harris plus 3. That is monumental. First of all, I'm trying not to get wrapped up in this and get too hyped, because that's never a good thing in an election. So let's assume that she's wrong. And for the first time since before 2008, she gets the outcome of a presidential race in Iowa wrong. That means that the most reliable pollster, someone who's been described as that by Nate Silver and 538 as the most accurate and reliable pollster in the country, is going to miss. And I think that's pretty important, because that'll really spell the death toll, the end for most polling ever being reliable in the Trump era. So that is massively consequential. But if she's right, we are heading for the biggest presidential landslide since the 1980s. And Harris will surpass the landslide that Obama won with in 2008. Iowa was a state that Trump almost won by 10 points in 2020. You have to assume that when there are enormous shifts like that in specific states, it's not going to be contained just to that state. So you have to look at other places where there is a Republican buffer that's less than that, and think that if there's a swing in Iowa like that, there's going to be a swing like that in other states. So first off, it kind of goes without saying, if she's winning Iowa, she's winning every single swing state, all 7 of them: Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia, Arizona, Nevada. Those are all going to her camp. But there are also 3 other states that went Republican last time, but did so by a margin less than Iowa. Those states are Ohio, Florida, and Texas. Now, of course, there could be a split in the vote between states like that. For example, Texas and Florida, maybe they have more concerns, their voters do, about issues relating to immigration than people up north in a state like Iowa. But if he's losing Iowa, he's losing the entirety of the Midwest. That goes without saying. And look, he could still hold Ohio, but even if he does, if Iowa's going blue, so are Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, which gets Harris above 270. So why has there been this shift? Because the last poll conducted by Selzer did have Trump ahead back in September, but Selzer said herself that it looks like the reason for this shift is independent women making up their minds. Independent women who are not registered as Democrats or Republicans are voting for Harris or are saying that they will, 57% to 29% for Trump. Nearly a 30-point lead with an enormous demographic. But there has also been a shift amongst seniors and amongst men generally, where it looks like independent men favored Trump back in September by like 27 points. That lead with independent men is now down to 14, as more undecided voters have made up their minds and started responding to polling. But I want to temper expectations, because what has happened here is that the most reliable pollster in the country, in their specific state, has said that a red state is going to go blue. She hasn't delivered like a national poll or anything like that. It's purely grassroots organization polling in Iowa. That does not mean that the race is over. The Harris campaign has just been handed a pretty big green flag, a sign of good things ahead as we approach the final days of this presidential race. But she only wins if you still vote. So, for the love of God, if you can, go and vote, because the signs are good. If you put in the effort, she just might win this thing.